Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first in our new conversation series, The Portal, which asks the question, if we're facing a new normal, what should that normal be? And how can we build a world which is fairer, more just and sustainable post-pandemic? My name is Dr. Patrick Partak, and I'm the director of the Social Impact Lab, the University of Southampton's community for students to gain knowledge, build skills, and learn through experience to lead sustainable social change. Now, this show is not just a conversation between me and a guest, but a prompt for a broader conversation we all need to be having. So if you have any questions or comments, do join in. Please post in the comments below, and we promise to read them out. For the second show in our series, we're delighted to welcome Laura Smith. Laura has always been a people person. She relishes the opportunity to connect with new people and delights in learning about their journeys and personal experiences. It's her belief that the key components which unite us as human beings is the innate drive to form relationships. Her 3 years of studying psychology at the University of Southampton have only strengthened this belief. Through her studies, she's discovered that 1 in 3 students reports feeling lonely on a weekly basis. Chronic loneliness has been shown to be as harmful to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. However, loneliness among students is a persistently neglected issue across the globe. Laura has launched campaigns with the Students' Union to raise awareness of loneliness as an issue and work to demystify and dispel harmful stereotypes associated with feeling alone. She aims to make loneliness an issue that's talked about. It's her hope to pioneer a solution to the epidemic that is student loneliness and to cultivate a connected, educated, and empathetic university community. Laura, welcome to The Portal.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here right now.
Thank you so much for taking the time, Laura. So I guess we'll start with lockdown. You've been at home, haven't you? And I believe in a family of 7. So how has lockdown been for you?
It's been a bit crazy, if I'm being honest. We've got a freshly turned 3-year-old that likes to run around and play games, and it's quite difficult trying to keep on top of university work as well, because quite often he'll open my door to my bedroom and he'll go, "Laura, come play just a little bit," and you can't say no. He's just too adorable. So I was at home for the last 2 months, and now I'm back at my university house where I can get on with my work undisrupted by really cute toddlers.
Yeah, I mean, this is quite a common thing that people have found, is this circle of guilt, right? That when you're at home, then you've got. I mean, not everyone's got 3-year-olds who are adorable and cute, but if you're at home, you've always got someone who's grabbing your attention, and it's difficult to break that circle of guilt, isn't it? And but you're back home now. We're back at university.
Yeah.
Was that a difficult choice for you to make, or was it in the end quite an easy one?
I think it was part of prioritizing myself, because I have the annoying tendency to give too much of myself to other people. And it does get a bit draining when you're constantly 24/7 trying to be the perfect sister and the perfect, caregiver and the perfect student, the perfect faculty officer, everything like that. So it was kind of difficult, but I did get 2 months to spend with my family. So I feel like I've got the best of both worlds, and I got to have that time spent with the people that I love. And now I get to have that time where I can prioritize myself, I can get on with my studies, complete my degree, and really focus on the campaign. So brilliant, excellent. So those 2 months you've spent in lockdown, you've been with your family, but what's been your go-to practice to keeping sane and keeping well during that time? There are so many. I think a big one for me is keeping a consistent exercise routine, because I'm a very active character. I absolutely love MMA. It's my passion. And it's very difficult for me when I come home and I suddenly don't train 6 times a week for 2-3 hours at a time. So one thing that I like to do is I set a different doorway of my house has a different exercise. So I have a pull-up bar on the doorway into the dining room, and whenever I go in there, I do how many pull-ups I can. It's always 10 press ups before I go to the toilet. It's like 50 squats going into the living room. Like you kind of, and you can up it per day. So you can have like 40 push-ups one day, 20 push-ups the next, just as long as you're doing something and keeping active.
I suppose you've got to be careful if you're on the pull-up bar in the dining room and someone's coming through, you don't hit them in the face when you're...
Yeah. Aiden loves it though, because my foster brother, he loves it because I get to, like, I hold him in my legs and I do pull-ups with him. So it's like a nice little weighted exercise and he gets a little ride.
This is uncanny. I have to tell you, I have a pull-up bar in my son's bedroom and I do that with him. And,
yeah.
I mean, I can't go all the way. He's 7. He's almost 7, but he's got the weight of a 2-year-old. But we do that. We've been trying to do all these kind of things where he's on my shoulders and I lift him as I'm doing a pull-up. But it's not quite worked out so far.
You'll
but
get there, though.
No one's got hurt. That's the main thing. That's amazing. So can you tell us how many pull-ups what's your record so far during lockdown?
My record? Well, chin-ups, it's 7. Like proper pull-ups. Obviously, they're different and they work different muscles. The like delt ones, I can do 5, and then the proper pull-ups is 4 because that's a bit more intensive, that one. I think you've lagged out a little bit, unless it's my connection. Are you back?
Oh, apologies, everyone. I think we just had a technical issue as Laura was demonstrating her pull-up action, which was really good form, but we were seeing it in slow motion. So it felt a little bit threatening because we always saw with fists down, and it was a bit rocky in the end. Okay, so let's move on. Apologies. Hopefully we won't have any more, but we can't guarantee if we weren't. Can you just tell us? I mean, you're a people person. It seems as though you have a lot of friends. But what was it that sparked your interest in this issue?
So for me, I have always been a people person, and I really enjoy connecting with people and learning about people's experiences and having that reciprocal bond with people. And I grew up in a village in rural Essex, so a lot of the friends that I had, I grew up with for my entire life. Or I went to the same sixth form as I did the secondary school. So I had people that I'd known for like 10 years, 7 years, 5 years. I had friends that I really trusted and I really connected with. And I think it was a bit difficult for me going from that environment where I had lots of people and I could, rely on people and depend on people and connect with people that way, into a completely new environment. Went from a rural place to a city, which was a big change.
Yeah.
Especially in air pollution wise. I was coughing for the first month or so. And then it was difficult in my first semester because it's quite hard to form those kinds of bonds and to really get to a point where you can trust someone like that. And I think my first semester was quite difficult because I hardly saw my family. They were often busy going up to visit my foster brother. And I just didn't really see many people. I felt like I had all these surface level connections and I didn't feel like I was connecting with anyone myself. Luckily, I'm a very outgoing person and I was able to change that as I developed more bonds and as I grew into different communities. So MMA became a big part of my life, the psychology community, several other societies and things. I was fortunate enough to be able to make those connections, but not everyone is so fortunate. And one of my best friends at university, he suffers with social anxiety and he really struggled to make those kinds of bonds, and it took a toll throughout his entire university degree because he didn't have that community that he could go back to and he didn't have those people he could rely on. So I think that was one thing that opened my eyes to it, my personal experiences and the experiences of my friends. And then looking into it more from a psychological standpoint, it was such a pervasive issue, but no one was talking about it. So there's so much research done on loneliness among students, but hardly ever is there anyone distinctly saying, you might feel lonely at university. There's lots of focus on mental health, which is amazing, don't get me wrong. But loneliness is quite often lumped in with mental health, and it's not given that distinct focus that a problem as big as that, 1 in 3 students feeling lonely on a weekly basis, it's a huge problem, and it's not being given the unique understanding and the unique attention that it deserves.
Yeah, and I mean that it's interesting, as you say, that your experience as an extrovert, as a people person, that even you felt lonely in that your first few weeks or months at university. So you can imagine what it's like for people who can't readily form those relationships, go out and join societies. You can see how that might be exacerbated among those students, especially perhaps international students, where where you've got the language barrier too. What do you think it was about the old normal, the kind of world pre-coronavirus, that meant that we were forming superficial, surface level friendships that we weren't able to, that has been more difficult to form deeper connections? Is there something about that world, that society, that you think contributed to it?
I think we kind of took things for granted a bit. We took that sense of community for granted because it's always been there. We've always had, other people available, so we didn't necessarily need to engage with that. And it's quite easy to get wrapped up in your own life. So I know people that go about their daily life and they hardly speak to anyone that's not in their immediate friendship circle. They don't say hi to strangers walking down the street. They don't check in with old friends. They don't talk to people at supermarkets. And it's very easy, particularly as we are in quite an individualistic culture. So Western society, it places so much emphasis on the individual, on your own personal achievement, on your own personal attainment, that there's not that focus on the community aspect. And as human beings, we're social creatures. That's a huge part of who we are. And I think historically, at least within Western society, that's been neglected because there is so much focus on the individual.
Yeah, and do you think, I mean, we talk about social media right now as being something that's really exacerbated that sense of kind of superficial connection, but not deep connection, and the fact that that social media is very performative, and our avatars on Facebook and Instagram and the other ones that I don't really know much about, like Snapchat and TikTok, that we are performing a role there, and these social media machines are not there to form connections, but as kind of envy machines, as we put up these very kind of pasteurized versions of ourselves and airbrushed avatars of ourselves. Have you seen something change during lockdown? Are you seeing people using social media in a slightly different way than before?
It has been quite refreshing to see that change. I think a big issue with social media is that we're only posting the good parts of our lives. So you never see someone post when they're crying or someone post when they're feeling lonely. And it's very easy to compare your entire life, so including the bad bits, to someone's highlight reel. And that's when we get that kind of disparity, and that's when we feel less than, because there's a competition we're never going to win. Obviously, those people, celebrities even, they have those bad moments and they have those times when they're feeling lonely and dejected and disconnected, but we don't see them. So it's very easy to think of ourselves when we're sad or when we're angry and see that as not good enough because it's not what people show on their social media. So I think that's definitely one big component on it. But I also think lots of everything nowadays is posting for the sake of looking good or seeming desirable, and it's not about that true connection. So I have a bit of a conflicting belief, because I do think that everyone should help people, but then you do see these social media people that go around and they give food to homeless people, but they make sure they're videoing, and it's a bit like, if you're doing it for people to say you're a good person, are you really doing it for a good reason?
Right.
Equally, people should be able to be proud of their achievements and to share what they're doing for others. But it kind of, particularly with some viral videos that came out, it did feel like people were doing it for the sake of showing that they're doing it rather than doing it for that sense of connection.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I hope not being able to take that community for granted anymore is going to mean that people wake up and they see that you should connect for the sake of wanting to connect. It shouldn't be a social media ploy for attention. It should be that genuine human understanding and that want and desire to empathize with someone and to relate to someone.
Right. Yeah. And that kind of builds into maybe the sense that the tide is turning a bit. And during lockdown, have you seen things around where you are, which has kind of shown where people are doing things that are more community minded? Have you kind of sensed at that local level a sense of community building?
Definitely. Obviously, coming from a small village in Essex, we had quite a good sense of community already because everyone kind of knows everyone. But it felt like that in my childhood. And then kind of as you grow up, I think you engage less and less in that community. But I have seen a sudden resurgence of people doing small things for the sake of kindness. So some people, they'll make little goodie bags and they'll leave them around the village and they'll say, I've hidden X many bags, try and find one on a walk.
That's adorable.
Yeah, it's really sweet. And you see people helping each other. So you see people volunteering with the NHS. You see people doing shopping for elderly people or people that are socially isolating. And it's really refreshing to see that level of connection and that want of connection. We had the VE Day party and everyone on the street, they were out like sat at the bottom of their drives, just talking to each other, obviously from a social distancing standpoint. And it was so nice because I don't think we've done that for 10, 20 years. That sense of community was just kind of, it faded out because it was always there. But now that it's not there, it's making us appreciate that more, and it's making us want to form those connections and want to engage within the wider community.
Yeah. And on that point, going back to our conversation last week, we talked about how time has been different during lockdown. And partly the reason why our behaviors have changed is because we've had more time. We haven't felt as pressured to perform. Obviously, a lot of us haven't had work in that very structured sense either. So I guess so it's been an enabler, I suppose, of that community spirit, the fact that we have had more time. We've all had to be very local. Has there been, so I guess a question is, when we go back to work, when everyone goes back to work, when schools reopen, colleges, universities, what do you think the barriers will be to building a more connected, intimate world?
I think there is definitely a risk of slipping back into those old habits because you never know how good something is until it's gone. Yeah. And obviously lockdown is a bit of a reality check, and it's shown us that we do need to appreciate these things. But I think the more time passes after lockdown, it might be easier to slip back into those old habits and to maybe not appreciate our community so much. But I'm hoping that this is going to be a perspective shift. So it's going to help people realize that there's more to life than their own little bubble. And forming those connections among the community, engaging with people, empathizing with people, that's really the way to feeling fulfilled and happy. Because I think particularly, going back to the social media point, we're constantly bombarded with this materialistic message of you need a Ferrari to be happy, you need X and Y to be happy, you need to have a fit body, you need to wear really nice clothes. We're constantly being told that that's what you need to be successful. And I think we're chasing a fallacy of fulfillment in that we think these material things are going to make us happy, when that's simply not the case. And you could have a mansion and 12 Ferraris and still be lonely.
Yeah. And you're right. And the science tells us that volunteering is better for our well-being than consumption. All the data shows that the dopamine hit you get from a social media not saying we don't need likes, so please like this video, but but the dopamine hit we get from social media, it evaporates very, very quickly. But the longer lasting high from volunteering, helping others, that is obviously far superior. So as you say, I mean, hopefully as we transition back to a more open society, that realization that consumption doesn't fulfill us will stay with us. That's a really important point. Just so for those of you who have just joined us, this is the Portal series by the Social Impact Lab. We're here in conversation with Laura Smith, and we're just talking about how to build a more connected world in the new normal. So Laura, I wanted to ask you, has there been have you seen some small changes that you think we can start to make now? Because obviously there's like a macro level shift that needs to happen where we're given more time, and that's linked to governments and policy, where maybe we move to a 4-day working week and we have more time to volunteer. But assuming that doesn't happen, what do you think we can do as individuals to build a more connected world?
That's an interesting question. I think fundamentally, like particularly coming back to loneliness comes from not feeling connected. And I'm hoping that, yes, that macro level needs to change, and we need to realize as a culture that these things aren't serving us, but that at an individual level, we're going to have that perspective shift, and we're going to make the effort to understand people more. And in that, it kind of, and it's not about just making an effort to go out there and meet people, because I appreciate that, not everyone finds that easy to do. There are people that suffer with depression, social anxiety. And I think as a community, we need to be more empathetic and more understanding of these people so that we can reach out and we can do our best to help them in a way that will be beneficial to them. So it's a mutual exchange that needs to happen, basically. We need to understand as a community and empathize and try and encourage people to engage with that. But also at an individual level, we need to make the effort to understand others and to empathize with people regardless of their situation. So it's very easy to, particularly as a young person, it's very easy to sit back and say, oh, all the old people are voting Tory, they're ruining the country. But we need to understand where that's coming from and why these beliefs are here. And we need to empathize with their position and work to connect with people on that deeper level.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant point. I know in America, after Trump was elected, and it seems like a lifetime, but was it 2016? 2016. There were these dinners that were dinner parties that were held across the country, and they were meant to bring together people who voted for Trump and Hillary. And the idea was they wanted to do exactly what you're saying. Is it's so easy to demonize people, to say, well, you voted Tory, they've decimated the NHS, you're a hypocrite for clapping for nurses and doctors. But it doesn't really it doesn't really help to build those connections, and it does just lead to more division and bitterness. So it's that movement for a more connected, empathetic society. It can have these big effects, can't it? Because then I guess it can kind of be an upswelling of, it leads from the micro to the macro, and then it may change the way that people vote, I suppose, and governments we get, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point as well, because I think when you do have that understanding and when you do make the effort to connect, even despite conflicting beliefs, you get a more holistic picture. Obviously, the world's not black and white. Not everyone who voted for Trump is a racist, and not everyone who, it's very easy to try and look at things through a black and white lens because it makes it easier for us. It's very easy to say, they're just a bad person, I'm not going to give them my time. But life isn't that easy. It's just, a million shades of grey. And when you understand that nuance, you can look at the human behind those beliefs and you can understand and empathize. And that is central to solving loneliness, because when you connect with someone like that, it's hard to feel alone. You can be alone in a room full of people if you don't feel like you connect with them. But when you get that sense of connection, that's when you can really have that shift take place.
That's a brilliant thought. Right, so let's now open this up for comments. I am now going to our Facebook page. Apologies, this is a little bit more clunky than it was last week because I can't see our page. So bear with me. Okay, so now I've been able to get to some of our questions. So it is now open to questions. So please do post your questions. We have about 15 minutes left for Laura to answer your questions. So let's go with the first one. The first one is from Amber. Hi, Amber. So her point in question is, this is such an important discussion. There's a huge pressure on uni being the best time ever, but that doesn't happen straight away or even at all sometimes. Loneliness can definitely get in the way and is very common. So the two questions Amber has are, what do you wish unis would do to help overcome loneliness in the student population? And secondly, how do you think uni going online will affect student loneliness?
That's a really important point and really interesting questions. Thank you, Amber. To address the first point, what can universities do? I think a big part about it is raising awareness of loneliness as an issue and making it clear that it's okay to feel lonely. Loneliness is a perfectly natural emotion. And I think obviously universities, they're trying to sell a product to us. So they don't want to make it seem bad or like you will be lonely. But in painting university as the best time of your life and, you know, having this idyllic view of university as a place where you'll meet tons of friends and you'll have tons of fun, it alienates those people that don't necessarily feel that way. And I think that's when we as students need to speak up and to say, yeah, you know, my university experience, it started off a bit rocky, but it gets better. Or to say, my university experience overall wasn't the best, it might be better for you. I think just raising awareness of loneliness and of nuances of university life. So it's not all going to be all good. It's not all going to be all bad. Just making people aware of that and helping them to appreciate the difficulties and to tackle them when they arise. I think that's the most important part. And then what was the second question? Was it?
And the second question was, how do you think uni going online will affect student loneliness?
That's an interesting question, mostly because I think people's circumstances in the lockdown are so different. It's kind of hard to give one blanket statement of how students can be impacted. So some people are with their families, some people are isolating in halls with friends, some people are isolating completely alone. Because there's such a variance of situations, it's a bit difficult to say at one point. But if university is online, particularly for next semester, I think it might make it harder for people to make those connections because you're not seeing people face to face, you're not engaging in activities together. It would be a tricky challenge, especially when facing loneliness within students at such high rates. So I think that's when we need to develop these online solutions and foster communities online. So we have the SUSU online community. Obviously, UniPal is something that we're developing to create those kinds of communities and to foster those connections. So it would be a tricky challenge. Do you have any thoughts on this, Pathik, how we can help improve student loneliness?
I think it's such an important point where, if I'm being really honest, on the other side of the divide as a member of staff, where we've had really struggled, I think, to adapt as fast as we need to the kind of epidemic of student mental health, loneliness being one of them, one of the components. And actually, you know, your campaign is so important because we haven't really looked at the causes and kind of disaggregated what causes problems with student mental health. So part of it is education, part of it is a kind of a real shift in resource allocation to realize we're not just providers of knowledge and to focus on student experience in the whole, you know. And I think it's the universities that will succeed will be the universities that can retool fast enough and just realize that all the things that we did up to this point, they're not really fit for the new world, and we're going to have to completely readapt our kind of learning environments, our welfare environments, the way we offer support. Everything is going to have to be kind of very, very quickly reorganized. So I think it's a really big challenge for us, and we're all kind of grappling in the dark right now. We don't know what's going to happen in 6 weeks. We don't even know when term will start next year. So there are so many big question marks hanging over all of this that it is a really big challenge. But all universities across the country are very much aware that mental health, student mental health, is an absolutely vital component, and that we need to dedicate resources to trying to address it.
It's really nice to get the staff perspective as well, because it's quite easy to have that divide between the students and the staff, and to feel not a part of that university community. But I guess having these conversations and engaging with the staff and students in a productive and constructive way, that's all we can do and more to kind of tackle loneliness and student issues.
Absolutely. And I think the big, I think the best thing for staff to do is to be really honest that this is new territory for us. Most of us training PhDs, social emotional intelligence is not a skill that most academics have. You get a PhD, you're not really trained in the skills you need to look after people in that pastoral capacity. And so it is a kind of a skill set that we're building as we're going. And as the kind of the factors that exacerbate mental ill health continue to grow, we just we're struggling to catch up, if we're being really honest. As a kind of a community of practice, it's something that is daunting and terrifying and causes anxiety for us. So because we often feel like we're failing, and I've got many colleagues who feel as though they're failing in their jobs because they don't know how to deal with these issues. We at the university have great professional support, but as I said, we weren't designed. The university structure was not planned for mental health to be one of the key components of the service that we offer. So it is a rapidly changing scene, and one in which I think we do need to be as open as we can. So thank you very much for asking that question. Okay, we have a question here from Shannon. Hi, Shannon. So, as mentioned, social media is superficial and can be a difficult platform to communicate, connect on a deeper level. What ways have you stayed connected, Laura, whilst in lockdown, without getting caught up in your busy life?
That's a really good question. If I'm being honest, it's not been that successful, particularly in the beginning when I was struggling to adjust to home life. I did get sucked into, I almost became nocturnal at one point because I was staying up in the day. Well, I was waking up at 4 in the afternoon because I'd stayed up until 5 in the morning getting work done. So it wasn't the most healthy. And then from the second I woke up, I was with Aidan and with the family. So it was quite difficult, but obviously it comes with just learning to prioritize your time, learning to prioritize myself and my own mental health, keeping my sanity, and keeping up with friends. So I speak to friends. I have like a few people I speak to every day, and doing video calls, doing online events. We do like online pub quizzes with MMA, with Psychology Society. I have a weekly pub quiz with my home friends. So that's every Sunday, and that's like 2-3 hours where we have a little catch up, but also have a bit of fun. I think it's just staying connected, and it's making the effort to check in on people and see how they're doing. It's making the effort to spend time with family. So I quite like to bake with my mum and with Aidan. So yeah, it's just learning to prioritize the right things. And I do get a bit swept up in my busy life sometimes, but it's learning that family are more important at the end of the day, and my own mental health is more important than my work. So have you found it difficult, Patrick, to adjust to home life?
I mean, I have to admit, I found it. I've talked about it with my wife quite a bit, and I was an early adjuster. So the first couple of weeks, lockdown for me was a dream. I really loved lockdown. And then I had a bit of a crash. So I contracted coronavirus, we think about five weeks ago. And I got back in the saddle, and it was quite easy for me to get back there. But then I had a bit of a mental health crash where I was zoomed out. I was exhausted by Zoom. It was just I couldn't look at myself again. And I realized I was just looking at myself a lot. And I don't know if other people are finding this, that in Zoom, I just look at myself a lot. Is my hair right? Sometimes I think, I look really good. Sometimes I can't stop staring. So but then I realized I can minimize my window, so I'm not looking at myself so much. Because obviously, in a normal interaction, you're looking at someone else. You can't see yourself. So on these online communications, they're completely distort real life. And you're giving yourself, you're kind of getting feedback about your own performance, which is very odd. So that was difficult. I have to admit, we're in a bit of a bubble here, and we're not looking forward to lockdown lifting. But yeah, it's very much a day-to-day thing, isn't it? You kind of, one day you may feel perfectly fine and adjusted, and lockdown's brilliant. The next day, you're kind of missing your friends and missing being out with them and seeing them and having just freedom to go out and see who you want.
Hug them.
Sorry?
I miss hugs.
I miss hugs. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, hugs. It's just, and that, I think, I mean, that's a really good point, right? Is when we go back to the new normal, one of the ways in which, at least for me, and I think you're the same, I'm a very tactile person. And one of the ways I express connection is through hugs. Yeah. And imagine people just recoiling from you as you go and approach them for a hug. It's going to be a very difficult situation to adjust to.
If there's a government law against hugs, I'm going to riot.
Oh man, I know. Get that vaccine ready. Everyone.
A bit touch-starved already. Like, can't do another 6 months.
Yeah, exactly. But it is as I kind of we said last week, that there's this huge divide between extroverts and introverts. That the people who are introverted, and I'm not saying you can't be an introvert and be tactile, but generally you tend to be, if you're an extrovert, you're quite tactile. So that not having that ability to reach out and touch people, some people are really grateful for that break. And we do tend to universalize our experience during lockdown, but it is always good to remember that all the things that we feel we've lost, other people feel that they've gained. So yeah, it is a very tricky one. Right, we've got a question here from M Smith. Hi, Ems. I feel like I feel like people have attempted to address problems with self-image on social media. However, I find it quite appalling that student loneliness has never really come up in this. I'm so glad there are people that are able to articulate the important issues that have been neglected. Do you know if there are any ties of academic performance with those who suffer more severely?
I think Pathic. Yeah. Pathic, come on. Oh no, Pathic's gone. Hi guys. We'll try and get him back in the call 1 second. Give us a little moment. Technical issues. Sorry guys. Hello, you back?
I'm back.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Okay, so apologies again. That was our second glitch. Sorry. So we had the question there from Ems. Just to recap. So Laura, do you know if there are any ties of academic performance with those who suffer more severely with loneliness? Possibly any research projects?
There's a few articles that I can try and find that do look at loneliness. I think they look at student connectedness compared to academic grades, and they do find that students that perform better are the ones that not only put the effort into their studies but do have that connectedness and that sense of community. So there definitely is a tie, and the lecturers always say, our staff, particularly within psychology, they always stress the fact that the people that are successful academically are also successful socially, so they do feel connected and they don't feel alone. And And I think that's largely because there's that social support system. So if you're feeling stressed about an assignment, you can go to a friend and they'll reassure you, or they'll give you some help. Maybe they can proofread. And if you don't have that social support and that sense of connection, it's very easy to perform not as good as you could do. It's not really achieving your true academic potential because another area of your life is lacking. So you need to have like a healthy balance of everything. If you're not meeting your social needs, it will be quite difficult to meet your academic needs. I don't know if you've seen like the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy, but
yeah.
So at the bottom, you've got like physiological needs, so food, water. Then you've got safety needs, so like shelter. Then you have social needs, so connectedness needs, relationship needs, family needs, friendship needs. And if they're not met, it's hard to reach those higher points where the academic comes in. So there's definitely a link between academic performance and students that feel more connected, that generally achieve higher.
Yeah, I mean, it's a brilliant point, isn't it? I mean, loneliness and social connections is so strongly, there's such a strong correlation between the two of them. I read somewhere that the value of having a close friend is the equivalent of having an additional £75,000 a year.
Wow.
Which is, you know, and you think about that, and you think about, as you said, the way that we, at least in the old normal, we prioritize and chase the wrong things. And how that has, and if we realize, and if again it's science that can lead us through this, that if science can tell us, well, actually, you know what, volunteering is more important, having deeper connections is important, having strong friendships is important, then maybe our behaviors will shift accordingly, and we will stop doing the things that are materialistic and superficial. So that's a really important point. I guess the one thing I want to ask Laura is, I wondered if that you've seen anything about this notion of social capital, and I don't know if that's come up in your research, but the idea that some people have high levels of social capital and therefore high levels of friendships, and there's a strong correlation between financial capital and social capital. And so, you know, and obviously you can see how that would work. That if you're a low paid person in the gig economy and you're on call all the time, you can't make plans to see friends because you never know when you're going to be called, or you're working unsociably long hours. You don't have time really for friendships. But if you have more time and you're not so dependent upon a wage on a wage income, then you have more time for friends. So there are all kinds of complexities around this, aren't there? And yeah, so has that kind of, that notion of social capital, is that something that you've come across in the research you've done?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important to distinguish it on an individual basis as well. So everyone has different amounts of needs for social connection. In psychology, it's called the need to belong. And it's a fundamental human need. It's something that everyone experiences. It's universal. And it's because our evolutionary history is entrenched with that sense of community. I think there's a misconception nowadays on what it means to be successful. And quite often people idealize this lone wolf who's entirely independent, who has everything figured out for themselves. And that's simply not the case. We've evolved to be social creatures. The people that were successful, at least as humans go, are the people that were able to build those communities and to foster those connections. They were the people that could stockpile resources with others, because you can harvest things more efficiently and hunt more efficiently if there's other people. There's quite often, I think it's a part of our individualistic culture, there's quite often the notion that the lone wolf is the one that is going to get all of the resources and is going to be successful. But it's simply not the case. And we need to challenge that idea and realize that we are social beings. And yes, everyone has different levels of the need to belong. So introverts, they typically have a lower need to belong, which is why they're happier with fewer friendships. And then extroverts have a higher need to belong, need more friendships. Yes, there is that individual distinction, but it fundamentally underpins everything we do, that drive to have relationships and that drive to make those connections. And it's important that we acknowledge that, and we do realize it's not all about you as an individual, it's about you within the community.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very well said. Okay, we have so many more questions. But a question here from Thea. Thank you both. Hi, Thea. Thank you both for such a thoughtful conversation. Do you think that after such a long period of social distancing, loneliness will be discussed more and people will be more understanding of others with social anxiety and reach out more?
That's definitely a hope of mine. I think while it is unfortunate that during the pandemic, so many things are being taken away from us, it is important because it's giving us that perspective shift and it's bringing to light these issues that may not have been discussed before. So I'm hoping that it's going to raise the profile of loneliness in general, but particularly amongst students where it is a uniquely difficult issue that's not being addressed. So 40% of 16 to 24-year-olds often feel lonely compared to 27% of over 70-year-olds. And it's not something you'd expect, because you'd expect that when you're young, it's the time of your life and you can do so many things and it's what it's painted to be, but it's simply not. That's not what the statistics say. So I'm hoping that it's going to bring to light these issues and help us understand that loneliness, it isn't age specific. You don't have to be old or infirm to feel lonely. And the more we fail to tackle that and fail to raise awareness of that, I think it's just going to exacerbate the issue. So a big hope post-pandemic, fingers crossed. Please engage with our student campaign against loneliness at Student UniPal on Twitter. Give us a follow. Let's help us raise the conversation and raise the profile of this tremendously important issue.
Absolutely. And we'll have a link to the video as well, which is in the description for this event, but we'll post it again. Right, okay, we've got time for one more question. So we'll go with the question from Lucy. Hi, Lucy. Do you feel less people will confront how they are feeling with much of uni moving online, such as support, or will it encourage more to reach out where it's not in person?
That's an interesting question. I think people generally feel more comfortable disclosing personal information on the internet. So when it's not face-to-face, there's less of a barrier to that. So it might potentially encourage more people that would otherwise not speak about their own experiences or their own mental health. But I think, obviously, use caution with saying it's going to do that for everyone. I think for a vast majority, I'm hoping that it's going to help them and it's going to make them access those resources more. Do you have any thoughts on this one, Patrick?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, it's like it's what we've seen so far is we have seen a lot of students reaching out to personal tutors. We're seeing anonymous resources now being created online where students can anonymously post concerns and issues that they've been having. So as you say, the web does enable that. But it is it's hard to know how people will react, and how they react in the short term is not necessarily how they react in the long term as well. I think, and again, it goes back to that question, I guess, of personality types. And some people will want that more kind of physical one-on-one experience in person to be able to really open up. Other people find that very daunting. So it's unclear, but I think what is important is that we look at the data and we look and see what's happening, and if people are reporting issues. If they're not, why not? And not take an absence of reporting to show that things are fine. Obviously, things are not fine. But as I think the university, our structures, we're adapting so quickly. We're having to adapt so quickly, and my hope is just that we're able to adapt quickly enough to deal with the volume of student support which we will need to offer in the next year, because it does look like that the next semester will be online. I think it's very unlikely that we'll be able to return to physical classrooms until semester 2, and that's for universities across the country. So it is something that we will most definitely have to be planning and preparing for. Okay, I think we've pretty much come to the end of our time. Oh, that's a shame. I want to say a huge thank you, Laura.
Thank you so much for having me. It's absolutely amazing to be a part of the conversation and to be able to raise the profile a bit and get people talking about this important issue.
Absolutely. And if you want to follow Laura's work, then do look at the video, which we will be posting, which is in this description. You can find more about the campaign on Twitter at Student UniPal. And if you want to email her, then you can connect with her on Facebook, or you can email her. We will have Laura's Southampton email address in the comments below as well, so you can contact her that way too. If this is your first time tuning into our events, please do join us at our Facebook page by searching University of Southampton Social Impact Lab, and visit our website, sutton.ac.uk/SI Lab. If you like this episode, show us some love, give us a like, post a comment, or share it with your friends. You can see this video again on our Facebook page. All our videos are saved, and you can also see last week's episode there too. Next week, we're delighted to announce that we have the amazing Dame Wendy Hall in conversation with us. So tune in again at 5 o'clock to hear from one of the world's leading experts on the web and artificial intelligence, and how those will change in the new normal. Until the next time, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and join us in building a world in which we can all thrive. See you all soon. Bye.